In this video, we're going to take a look at 5 things guaranteed to happen in any real SHTF or grid down scenario. We will also talk about a few steps you can take to better protect yourself and your family should any of these situations occur. Please look at this as less of a survival guide and more as food for thought or an outline for you to advance your preparedness plan. The number one, and maybe the most obvious, guarantee is there will be no electricity. Although in our day and age we take it for granted, electricity is the fragile, frayed thread that holds our society together. With a lack of any real plan from our so-called leaders, coupled with a very limited supply of components available to fix any catastrophic grid damage, we would be facing a prolonged event. In the beginning, most would be unfazed, as we have all experienced brief power interruptions due to a wide range of reasons, from storms to accidents. But as the hours turned to days, the realization would set in. It's not coming back on. The unprepared would run to the stores only to find the shelves had been picked clean by looters and rioters, who were refused service not because of a lack of product, but because of our reliance on technology. The computers we rely on for the cash registers to check us out, and the card readers that process payments from the credit and debit cards that almost everyone uses now, simply wouldn't work. Operating on a just-in-time delivery system that also relies on those computers would mean what you see is what you get. There are no more deliveries coming. As the unprepared make their way home to a fridge that is no longer cold, its contents, if any, slowly rotting, they now realize the limits of their supplies. They ponder a future without lights or a fridge, without security systems, TVs, computers, or entertainment that we have all become addicted to. It will set in at some point. They also no longer have access to one of life's most critical assets, clean water, which brings us to number 2. Besides air, water is the most crucial element of survival. Without water, you would die in days. With less than 1% of the Earth's water being drinkable, we can safely say most Americans take access to clean drinking water for granted. In a scenario where the grid is down and there is no electricity, water pump stations will be unable to operate the valves and pumps that keep water flowing to the faucet. Although these pump stations have generators, they wouldn't have enough power or fuel to keep them going long, if at all. Even in rural areas where they have their own wells, they rely on electric in most cases to pump the water out of the well. Another concern with water and electric being out is sewage treatment plants will not operate. This is not only a cause for concern of sanitation purposes, which is likely to become the number one killer in any long-term grid down situation, but also worries of contaminating large bodies of clean drinking water. This is why, although number 2 on our list, water should be your number 1 prepping priority. FEMA calls for 1 gallon per person per day. Given the many uses of water besides drinking, like washing, showering, clothes, dishes, cooking, watering pets and livestock, I would recommend at least 3 gallons per person per day. If you take these steps, you'll have this water to fall back on, whereas the unprepared at this point would be hungry, thirsty, and seeing infrastructure crumble around them at an amazingly fast pace, bringing us to number 3, no infrastructure. And this is a big one. Though not as crucial to life as water and air, without infrastructure, life as we know it would not exist. To begin with, as we touched on earlier, the just-in-time delivery system would come to a screeching halt, meaning after the first few days there would be no new product delivered. Not only because not many people possess the skills to place and process those orders without computers, but without electricity there would be no power for the pumps at the gas stations, rendering virtually every gas or diesel-fueled car or piece of machinery useless in a prolonged situation. There would also be absolutely no public transportation. No taxis and Ubers and trains or buses, not to mention that the roadways would probably be damaged and blocked after looting and riots. Also, communications would go down. No cell phones, no landlines, no internet, no email, no postal service, complete radio silence. And with comms down, emergency services would be limited at best. Hospitals would be packed, but they would be able to do very little given the circumstances. And just like firemen and policemen, as the gravity of the situation set in, they would likely leave their posts to go home and protect their own family. And at this point, no one would blame them. Which brings us to number 4. no rule of law. In a world without rule of law, or as a lot of preppers like to refer to it as, WROL, without electricity or 911, and with emergency service responders no longer at your beck and call, you are on your own. You are totally and solely responsible for the safety and well-being of your family and yourself. Without those emergency responders, it's highly likely society would devolve rather quickly. With no food and water and the natural human instinct of survival kicking in, your friends and neighbors would begin to perform acts just weeks ago thought of as unimaginable. Joe from down the street, who you would wave to on your way home from work every night, could potentially form a group or a gang of angry and hungry looters. And if these looters began going door to door demanding food, you would not be able to call the police. If they began damaging and starting fires in the neighborhood, you would not be able to call the fire department. You are the police, fire, and medical team that will save your family. At some point, rather than go head to head with a gang of hungry looters, it would be prudent to remove yourself from the situation. This could prove difficult though, especially in the cities where you have larger numbers of neighborhoods, each with their own groups of looters, as well as damaged and blocked roadways preventing your passage. Basically, society cannot exist without rule of law. That rule is what guarantees equality to all in the eyes of the law. Scared people think and behave very selfishly. The fear of being sent to prison is what stops people from doing the unthinkable. Remove that deterrence, and in no time, we're in Mad Max, where it would truly be only the strong survive. But don't jump the gun just yet. If it doesn't devolve that far, and the rule of law is restored in a reasonable amount of time, meaning a couple of months, there is the potential that you could be prosecuted for any crimes you commit during this time. With that being said, do what you must to protect your family. Period. And finally, that brings us to number 5. It is a 100% guarantee that the cash you have in your wallet will become worthless, along with any credit or debit card, money in the bank, or 401k, as well as any digital or cryptocurrency. At first, the cash you have in your possession will work just fine, but I recommend changing your paper dollars for physical products as fast as possible. For within a few days, most stores would be picked clean, and any stores that still have product and are operating would no longer accept cash, realizing that those green pieces of paper with really cool pictures are now worthless, and any stock that they may have left is simply more valuable to them. So long term, cash wouldn't work, and other forms of barter would become necessary. A lot of preppers preach gold, silver, and precious metals, as do I, specifically because precious metals are viewed as valuable around the globe now as well as throughout history. In all likelihood, small local economies would develop, with each having its own currency or a product of value for person-to-person transactions, much like the South during the Civil War era. Realistically, anything that had value at this time, from food and water to alcohol and bullets, would be accepted for barter. Deals would be struck on a supply and demand basis, though I would caution against trusting just anybody to barter with, as well as not to reveal all you have to potential traders. In a long-term situation, one of the most valuable assets you could have would be skills, specifically pertaining to self-sufficiency. If you have the skills to grow food aplenty, you will also have extra for barter, as well as less need to barter. Now that we've discussed the 5 events that are guaranteed to unfold in SHTF, let's quickly go over some steps you can take to protect yourself and your loved ones. First and foremost is action. It's great that you spent the time watching the video up to this point, but now it's time to get off your butt and put this knowledge into action. So for no electricity, a couple basic steps you can take are store batteries, flashlights, candles. Think of how you can cook and start planning accordingly. For no water, you can store cases of bottled water or gallon jugs. Buy water filters like a Berkey, or a personal mobile water filter like a LifeStraw, or water purification tabs. Also, take some time to learn the skills of cleansing and purifying water. For no infrastructure and no rule of law, some steps of preparedness would be to have at a minimum 2 weeks of storable food. Also, you might want to store some gas or fuel, but be aware that these days gas actually does go bad. Also, consider alternative means of transport in case you have to leave your home. Work on building skills of self-sufficiency, such as gardening and seed saving. Obtain a weapon for protecting your family, whether that be a gun or an edged weapon. Get in shape and learn some self-defense techniques. Buy multiple fire extinguishers and smoke detectors, as well as discuss fire evacuation plans with your family. Obtain at least some basic first aid and medical supplies, as well as skills to actually perform simple medical procedures that could save the lives of your loved ones. So I've provided a stepping off spot for you to advance your preparedness plan. Now please, take the action. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Give me a thumbs up and please consider subscribing. Stay safe.